they can be found in the website there. It's www. That's missing. www.nationalacademies.org, Hong Kong, HK. Okay. I'm told that nas.edu is much easier. You can find the agenda as well as biographies, please. So now it's time. Can I have my slide? Just one slide, please. Yep. Okay. So I would like to start the second session in the morning of the first day. My name is Kazuto Kato from Osaka University, Japan. And I'm moderating this session. Well, in order to promote global dialogue about genome editing technology, we need to understand views and opinions of other people, not just about people around us and in the same specialties, but those who are in very different societies and cultures and the field. So therefore, to start the 3-day meeting of this summit, we decided to have this session. The session is about social and philosophical reflections on manipulating genetic variations. The aim of the session is to, well, as shown here at the top, the aim of the session is to share broad perspectives of diverse societies and cultures about technologies to manipulate genetic variations. So as you can see here, we have a list of excellent speakers from around the world, from diverse regions and societies. Well, from China, Qatar, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom. The list is not exhaustive, but they give examples of variety of perspectives. So after hearing the talks, we would like to engage with people in the floor. So let's enjoy the session. The first speaker is Professor Renzong Chu from China. I'd like to invite him to the podium. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I completely agree with the statement of the organized committee. Now in China, our colleagues just read this statement. You know, after landing in Hong Kong airport, a huge of the message on the work my younger colleague He Jiukui did, bombarded in my mobile. Almost all Chinese scientists, bioethicists, and other field scholars very strong opposed against Dr. He's work. But unfortunately, they also reject inheritable genome editing. So I think the statement is very important to point out the importance of the inheritable genome editing. So in view of this event, I have to revise my PPT. First, I will express or make my response to the event on the on the report of the genome modification for preventing HIV. If the report in the website is true, what Dr. He did is not just somatic, now germline genome modification, but germline genome modification for enhancement. This is a practice with the least degree of ethical justifiability and acceptability. It is the most difficult to assess the risk-benefit ratio in enhancement, even for medical purpose. So it is very difficult for us to protect the future child's interests. It should not be our priority, and it should not be our agenda now. I mean enhancement. There is a convenient and practical method to prevent HIV infection. To use genome editing, it seems like to shoot bird with cannon. According to our regulation, the protocol of the clinical trial should be reviewed and approved by IRB, Institution Review Board, or Institution Review Committee. If the report in the web is true, the IRB of Shenzhen Meihe Hospital is not the Institution Review Board of South University of Science and Technology, or now the institution Dr. He did his genome editing. So the review is invalid. According to Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Science and Technology, the regulation on assisted reproduction and the embryonic stem cell research. The genetically modified embryo is prohibited to be implanted into human or animal reproductive tract. So what Dr. He did violates the relevant regulation. Genome modification by genome editing for prevention or enhancement, both will change the gene pool of human species, Homo sapiens. How could Dr. He and your team change the gene pool of human species without considering the need to consult other parts of human species? During, we just have an annual meeting on bowels in Shanghai. During the 8th National Conference of Bowels Health in Shanghai on November 16 and 18, there was a panel discussion on where a rural situation of genome editing occurs in mainland China. So concern one is that the rural situation of genome editing will occur, such like the rural situation of improving unregulated stem cell therapy during the period of 2005 to 2012. Hundreds of the hospitals in collaboration of the biotech companies to provide this service. And so-called stem cell therapy is just a direct injection of the undifferentiated adult stem cells or umbilical stem cells. 10 or even hundreds of thousands of patients taken into the trap. And the fake stem therapy might cost the patient Chinese yuan 10 or even 100 million yuan out of their own pocket, which became a fat profit for doctors, hospitals, and biotech companies. But for the patient, nothing happened. No improved for their condition. One of them though died. Concerned too, it's very strangely for me. During the period of 2010 to 2015, a dozen of the books for teaching medical ethics were published in which the authors claimed that people with genetic defects or disabled physically or mentally are less than. This means inferior. The same with the Nazi term. Have no value for reproduction. And they are the burden to the society. Their life has no value, so they should be subject to compulsory sterilization. If their suggestion would be accepted by the government, there would have been 10 million of people undergoing compulsory sterilization. This would be a crime more grave than the Nazis. How will the patient and their offspring with unadded genome be treated? If the future doctors and scientists were trained in this way, how can they treat patients with genetic disease and the disabled physically and mentally? If genome editing for treating and preventing disease would be widely practiced, part of the people with genetic disease or their gametes or embryo would undergo genome editing. They and their offspring would get rid of the genetic condition, and the other part of the people won't. Would this later part of the people and their offspring be properly treated as inferior, having no value as a human being? But this is not a government policy, because the former president, Jiang Zemin, once in the international meeting said that they are the creator of the social waste, and they pay much more effort than healthy people. They should enjoy all human dignity and right as able-bodied people. The liberation of the disabled, the group in the most difficulties in the society, is a major symbol of the development of human civilization and social progress. I think the majority of Chinese will agree with this, what the president said. Somatic genome modification by editing is proved to be safe and efficacious. What is the next step? Is to prevent offspring from suffering genetic condition a good worth to pursue for? The estimated number of the thalassemia carriers in China is around 47 million. So this is a big number of the genetic disorder in China. But just a very relatively single gene disease. However, we have to do two things, I think, before we reach the stage of clinical trial of genome modification, editing in human gametes or embryo. One is building an ethical framework to evaluate decision-making, scientists, physicians, and the regulator made. Second is making government arrangement for apply genome editing in genome modification. Oh, sorry. First, the precondition for applied genome editing in genome modification, I think is first basic research and the preclinical research. We have to do a lot of work to perfect, to improve the genome editing, and first try to in the animal model like this. All these efforts are ensure a favorable risk-based ratio to protect the future child's interests. Second is protecting the interest of future parents. The purpose of genome modification is to give birth to a child without the genetic condition the future parents suffer. This is our moral imperative to protect the interests of the future parents, including seriously implementing ethical requirements of the informed consent. Whatever the result is, we must provide counseling to them, and incompetent should be excluded in the list of future parents. Second is protecting the interest of the future child. The purpose of the inherited genome editing is give birth a child who will not suffer the genetic condition his parents had. So the purpose is not to make money, and the purpose is not to do the eugenics. Protect social interests. Inherited genome innovation may affect other people in the society, such as moral status of these people is possibly threatened, and they would be stigmatized and discriminated. Those who suffer genetic disease do not undergo genome editing, and their children who inherit genetic condition from the parent. Physicians, so I suggest, physicians and science have the moral responsibility for reconfirming that our work is to give birth a child without inheriting genetic condition. We never ever stigmatize and discriminate against any people who suffered any genetic disease, and they have same intrinsic value and human dignity with us as a human being, and put it into action. About the governments, the first is professional governments. I will suggest Chinese Medical Association and especially Chinese Society for Genetics and Medical Genetics, they should develop the ethical guideline to their members to when they do the inherited genome editing. The institution governance. I think very important is we have to do some capacity building. This must be strengthened for IAB being competent to do ethical review on the protocol of the inherited genome editing. As an external review body, the IAB may be not qualified or competent to review the protocol of the inherited genome editing because the members of the IAB do not have sufficient knowledge of genomics, genome editing techniques, and ethical issues they may raise, as well as the capability to analyzing and assessing the risk-benefit ratio. So I think we should do the training. Regulatory governance, where we suggest the National Health Commission, actually is the Ministry of Health, developing the special regulation on applied genome editing in the human reproduction. Second, the license system should be established. Third, the protocol of genome modification needs double S review, institutional review, and expert review. And the system of the examination and assessment of IBs, review of the protocol of genome modification should be established. Professor Tsai did a lot of job in the assessing, examining the IB's performance. Next is the legal governance. The existing regulation which prohibited the implementation of the modified gametes or embryo into human reproductive should be revised. The legislature will play a critical role in the consensus reached by citizens and keep communication with other countries. Finally, I will suggest United Nations should convene a meeting among the member states to discuss genome editing in human reproduction for genome modification will change because the inherited genome editing will change the gene pool of the mankind. Member states should reach a consensus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renzon, for a very thoughtful talk. So now I'd like to ask a second speaker to come up, Professor Mohammed Ghauri from Qatar.
Good morning, everybody. Very happy to be with you here among the distinguished speakers in this summit. I'll speak about the Islamic ethical perspectives on human genome editing. I will start with a few remarks about the field of Islamic bioethics itself, how bioethical questions get discussed and debated within the Islamic tradition. Difficult questions and puzzles like the ones we discuss now on genome editing are not done by one person. There are different experts with different brains, minds, and specializations who come together to discuss these issues. In the Islamic tradition, usually the two important groups who come together to discuss these issues are the religious scholars, theologians, and the biomedical scientists, but many times also they have other specialists like lawyers, policymakers, philosophers, etc. So we usually, Islamic bioethical deliberations are interdisciplinary in nature. This interdisciplinary approach has been institutionalized since the beginning of the 80s, and we have three main organizations which have been discussing these issues through this interdisciplinary approach from the beginning of the 80s until now. And the issues related to genomics in general started with conferences and seminars dedicated to this topic, in particular genomics, genetic engineering, etc. Since 1993, a few years after the start of the Human Genome Project, till 2013. Of course, this didn't come to an end, but these are the key discussions, because after 2013, we have the two nationwide genome projects, which started in two Arab countries, in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar. And since then, the discussions on genomics had a new curve. It's not anymore about theoretical issues, but about something on the real ground when these two countries started having their own national genome projects. Against this background, so these are the discussions within the Islamic tradition. We have interdisciplinary discussions coming from scientists and theologians in particular. Now about the human genome editing, how did these interdisciplinary discussions approach the question of human genome editing? To start with, there is something upon which everybody agrees. When it comes to humans, there is a human dignity. Humans represent the cream of creation who have been created by God. So they have anything that deals with humans, human bodies, human genome, etc., must be done with a great level of cautiousness. So there must be safety, efficacy, informed consent, respecting privacy of the people, etc. All these things must be considered. And there is a consensus among all the people who participated in these discussions that these issues must be taken very seriously. But now, in order to summarize the discussions, two main questions will determine the answer. How does Islamic ethics look at human genome editing? Number one, what are we editing? Our genome or our genes do not reside in the same type of cells. We can do the editing at the level of somatic cells, and we can do this at the level of germline cells. When it comes to somatic cells, it's much more acceptable. And the religious scholars are much more receptive to this because they treat it like a treatment and a treatment tool which affects or which has impact on a limited scope, a specific type of cell. With a specific type of function, whether it is in a liver or a kidney or whatever, and on one individual, not the people around. But when it comes to germline cells, the issues becomes much more controversial. Some of them, at least, they don't see it as treatment, but they see it as human intervention, which can go beyond the rule of humans in the universe. Of course, we speak here about a religious worldview, Islamic worldview in particular, in which there is God, who is the creator. We humans are creatures. So our authority in the world is limited. So there is a guideline from the creator who tells us what can be done, what cannot be done. So some religious scholars would say that modifications at the germline cells goes beyond the human role assigned to him by God, because you are not deciding about yourself. You are not even deciding about only your children, you are deciding about the future of generations to come. Do we as humans have this long-term wisdom to take such decisions which will impact generations to come? It's a question. Also, it's about authority over one's body. From an Islamic perspective, our authority as humans on the body is not in the capacity of an owner. We don't own our bodies because we did not create them. We have an authority over our bodies as trustees. So it's much more limited authority than the authority of someone who owns the body or who sees himself or herself as the owner of the body. Not to mention the authority of others' bodies. Not to mention the authorities of bodies and humans which will come in the universe when we are not there anymore. How can we decide about all this stuff? The third problematic issue with germline cells is distributing lines of lineage. From an Islamic perspective, paternity and lineage must always happen through the institution of marriage, couples who are legally married to each other. And so children must be linked, biologically linked to people who are married to each other. Having a genetic components coming from outside the husband and wife is problematic. So if we speak about germline cells modifications with genes or parts of the genome coming from outside the married couple, it will also disturb this line of lineage according to some religious scholars. The second question is about why, the telos, the teleology question. Why are we doing this? There are two big answers. The first one is that we are doing this modification in order to treat a disease, as we have seen in the presentations this morning, and we will see more throughout the conference. Treatment from an Islamic perspective is something which is morally permissible, even recommended, and if it is life-saving, it's obligatory, morally obligatory. It is part of the divine scheme of creation. We are embodied creatures. We have bodies. These bodies makes us vulnerable when we deal with other factors in life, so we become sick. When we are sick, we have to follow the natural laws in order to restore our health again. So this shouldn't be a problem. But is treating our diseases by modifying our genes or our genome in general, is this a special type of treatment that should be morally different than the others? Some would say yes. And they said this is at the molecule level. Genes responsible for diseases are not only responsible for diseases, but for many other things in the body. So we have to be much more careful when we modify them than when we, for instance, do a surgery for an appendix, on which we have much more information than others. So some say if we have a safer alternative than modifying the gene, we shouldn't do it. Others would treat it equally from a moral perspective than any other treatment, as long as the issues of safety, efficacy, privacy, and what we discussed earlier will be honored. The second issue, we are doing it not for treatment, but for enhancement, to make ourselves taller, stronger, more intelligent, I don't know what, more cognitive capacities. And this is much more controversial than treatment. And the key of the disagreement among the participants in Islamic bioethical discussions on this has to do with how do we understand our human nature, which is created by God through the Islamic worldview. Some say that, and they take quotations from the Quran to prove their opinion, we have been created in a perfect way. So our original form of creation, the way we are created, am I finishing? Yeah? Okay. Is perfect and is also fixed. So our duty as humans towards God is to maintain the perfect status of our human nature. We shouldn't change it. We shouldn't modify it. We shouldn't play too much with it. If something goes wrong, then we treat it. But we don't go beyond this. And they take, like, we have created man in the best composition. خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Others say no. Our human nature is not fixed. Our human nature is evolving. Our human nature is changeable and improvable. And again, they quote also some Quranic verses like, He adds to creation whatever He wills. يَزِيدُ فِي الْخَلْقِ مَا يَشَاءُ. We can always add to this creation, and this does not go beyond the divine will. Some also, when it comes to the enhancement, says that we are not only composed of a body, but we have also a soul. And the soul has functions. And sometimes, especially when it comes to enhancement, it seems we are modifying issues not related to the body, but related to the soul. So we have to be cautious also about this. I will not get into details about this because our moderator is waiting for me. The last point I want to say here is that there is no one-fits-all approach. So when we speak about human genome editing, we cannot say it's good or morally bad. There are many layers and many modifications. We can make like a ladder which starts with acceptable, the least controversial when it comes to modification at the level of somatic cells, only for the purpose of treatment. And then it can go to more and more controversial up to the most controversial one when it comes to this germline modification only for the purpose of enhancement. And this is just which will appear by the end of this month, about Islamic ethics and the genome question, in which you can find some issues related to what I have been talking about, and other issues related to genomics, which will also be available for free as open access. And here I stop. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you for